Those of you that are here in the chapel and to those of you that are on the live stream. I'm Debbie Gefkin. I'm filling in for Emily Zimbrick-Rogers this morning, and this is our final week of sharing thoughts about faith and work. So the first week we heard about business, the second week was law and ethics, the third week last week was education, and today we're going to hear about health, wellness, and medicine. So we have three representatives, parishioners, who are going to share about their profession and how faith animates their professional career. So I'll just briefly introduce our three speakers, and then each of them will give you a little bit more about themselves, and we'll have some discussion around various topics. So this is Jane Fisher, and Jane is a registered nurse who's now retired, and yet, as she says, you're always still working in some way or another, and Jane is on the advisory council for the St. David's Day School. She was a school nurse, so that gives her some insight into families and children, mixing it with your profession. So Chrissy Harrell is a practicing pediatrician, and she is with Children's Hospital in Haverford and a colleague of Amy Allen. And Chrissy will give her perspective because all of her experiences through the pandemic have been in person, so that's a little bit different than Zoom. And Chaz Worrell is a mental health therapist who has a private practice and works independently. So I think it'll be wonderful to hear from everybody today. And Jane, I think we'll start with you, and then Chrissy and Chaz.
Great.
Okay.
Sure.
Thanks,
Deb. Good morning, everyone. As Deb said, I'm Jane Fisher. I am a retired nurse. How I got to this point, went into nursing. I was very good at math and science in high school. Loved my anatomy and physiology class, so went on to nursing school. And as a young nurse, I did adult internal medicine and cardiology. I was a cardiology research nurse for about a decade up at Hartford Hospital in Connecticut, and that gave me the coveted 9-to-5, Monday through Friday job that every nurse strives to get, so I was thrilled with that. Then we moved here, and I had our son, and when he hit first grade, I decided to kind of reinvent myself as a school nurse with a very steep learning curve. I didn't really have, other than my own child, pediatric experience. So I took a few courses at Villanova, kind of brushed up my assessment skills, and I started subbing at Devon Elementary School mostly, but in the TE school district. And I did that, and it led to a part-time job, which led to a full-time job, and so I spent about 15 years in the district being a school nurse, and it was a great job. Anyway, after that, when I retired, it was shortly after that, the formation committee for a new nursery school here at St. David's was getting together, and I was invited to join that to see what type of school it should be, how faith should look in that school, and it was really a great experience for me, just bringing my health and safety background. And so that led to the advisory commission, which I'm still on today. And a lot of that initially was just helping to write policies for the school, health and wellness policies. A lot of that comes from what they need for licensure. So it's very straightforward until about 2 years ago, and then nobody's world has been straightforward since then. But I'm happy to say the school has thrived. It's done great, and we've put a lot of work into keeping everybody there and happy and healthy. That's my story.
Great. Thank you, Jane. That's really helpful to hear your standpoint, and especially, I think it's interesting, the connection with St. David's Day School. So, Chrissy, now, and feel free to talk a little bit just as a timeline goes. We have till 11:15 on the session. Okay. Thank you.
My name's Chrissy Harrell. My husband, Rod, and I have been members here at St. David's for about 10 years now. We have 3 children, Luke, Reagan, and Emma, who are 13, 11, and 8. And Emily asked me to speak on this panel a couple weeks ago about how faith is part of my profession. And when I think about it, I really actually think about my life as having 2 jobs, my job as a mom and a wife, and my job as a pediatrician. And I'm blessed to say that faith is a really important part of both of my jobs. By way of background, I grew up in a Catholic home where I went to church every Sunday. There was no question whether you were going to the birthday party or the soccer tournament, you were going to church. So it wasn't a question. When we were on vacation, we would find a church. We went to church. And so faith was part of my life growing up. It was I went to Catholic school until 8th grade. Faith was part of not only my Sunday life, but my day-to-day life at school too. And so from a young age, I think I was really instilled with values that carried with me through life. My 6th grade teacher, thinking back when I was thinking about what I was going to speak about, I think my 6th grade teacher was really influential in my life. My school was close to a hospital, and every time an ambulance would drive by, she would make us all stop and pause and say a prayer for whoever was on the receiving end of that ambulance or whoever was in that ambulance. And that's something that's just stuck with me today, and hopefully my kids someday too. Anytime we see an ambulance with the sirens blaring, we always say a quick prayer. She also made us memorize Psalm 23 and stand and recite it as a class every single day, which was a chore at the time. But I've called upon that psalm many times in my life, and so that has carried me through. But how I came to my life as a pediatrician also happened in my 6th grade year when I was diagnosed with a bone tumor, which fortunately turned out to be a benign bone tumor. But in the process of having gone to 1,000 doctor appointments and MRIs and PET scans and surgery and all of that, while I'm sure was scary at the time and terrifying for my parents, I came out of it feeling like, God, I want to be a pediatrician. This is amazing. I love all of this. I want to be a doctor when I grow up. I love children. This is it. This is what I want to do. So I somehow continued on that journey through college, into med school, and thinking back in college, I still held on to my faith. I can't say that my attendance at church was great. I probably went a couple of times when I needed God to help me do well on an exam. I needed some extra prayers to get through. But my faith carried me through. And then I met my husband halfway through med school. He grew up Presbyterian and I grew up Catholic. And I thought, gosh, how is this going to work out? I don't know. But really, in those initial conversations, when we talked about religion, what mattered most to both of us was our faith. And we both grew up in really, faith-filled homes, and we both wanted that for our children. And fast forward, we got married, we had children, we moved to the area, and needed to find a church. And so we went church hopping, and we went to various different churches. And then our next-door neighbor said, how about St. David's? Go check it out. So we came, we dropped off our 2 babies at the time into childcare and sat in this chapel and had what seemed to be the best date ever. We were alone, we were in this wonderful church, and it just felt right, and we felt our home, and we felt at home, and we've been here ever since. So where am I going with all of this? How do I keep faith in part of my life, both at home and at work? It's really, I can simplify it in that when your role model in your profession, Jesus, happens to be the greatest healer of all time, it's easy to just call upon God to help me when I need help. And I really, I feel like in my, both at home and at work, but I'll shift more now to my profession, it's not always easy, and I have definitely had hard moments where I've needed to call upon God, and day-to-day moments too, where I feel exhausted, I'm overwhelmed. I have screaming children, difficult parents, challenging cases, just the burden and the pressure of the organization I work for, all of it. yet somehow, if I just say, God, help me, work through me, God, do your work through me, help me get through this day. Like, the end of the day always comes, and I always make it home, and I always get through the day. And I don't know if I could do my job without my faith, because I think, rely on God a lot to get me through. And on the other hand, there are wonderful moments too when I'm rounding on newborns in the hospital, and in those first few hours when they're born and you hold up a brand new baby, like Frank holds up the babies when they're baptized. It's like this awe-inspiring, overwhelmingly wonderful moment, and God's present in those times too. And so I think basically what I'm trying to say is I try to find God in the little things in my work to help me get through my work. And at home, I'm trying my best as well to raise my kids in a faith-filled home. And I don't think I'm doing as great of a job as my own parents did getting my kids here every Sunday, but I am raising them in a home where they know and love Jesus, and our faith matters. So doing the best I can.
I'm Chaz Wargo. I'm a mental health therapist. And I'd like to echo what Chrissy said, too, having a family that was very supportive of the Christian faith as well. My experience was when my mother, who only had boys, by the way, would drive by a hospital, she would tell us we had to be quiet and we had to say a prayer. And when I was young, I thought, what a religious, faithful thing to do. And as I got older, I came to realize she had boys and she needed them to be quiet, at least for a little bit of a respite. So that's my experience of at least growing up in a Christian faith. As a mental health therapist, I work with people who have problems. That's what I do. I talk to people primarily. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't prescribe medicine, but I do talk to people. And that's primarily what therapy does. My experience has been there has been a whole gamut of different problems that people have brought to me. But each individual problem, to me, is a serious problem. Whether a person is having serious mental illness that might require hospitalization, or if they're dealing with anxiety or depression, which to me is as serious a problem. Hope, compassion, and love are three components that I try to attend to when I look at the work that I do. I have a small quote here from the Bible. I'm not a practicing sermon person, so I have to read these things if you don't mind. In the book of Jeremiah, God says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And I try to offer hope to people. People come to me sometimes out of desperation. Sometimes that desperation, Sometimes that desperation can lead to serious situations such as an attempted suicide. Sometimes it's an interference in their life so that people are incapacitated, can't work, can't interrelate with other people. So when God says he wants to bring you hope, it's the same thing I want to do. I'm not God, obviously, so I may not be anywhere near as good at it, but at least I try to hope to aspire towards that. Compassion. Jesus was a compassionate individual. I think everyone here will agree to that. Just by giving up his life, he showed his compassion. But the other things that he did in those 3 years of his public life, where he cured the blind, he raised Lazarus from the dead, he even did what his mother asked him. Sorry to the people on Zoom if I'm losing my microphone. Jesus' mother said to him, "Hey son, they don't have any wine. Can you help out?" And as a dutiful son, he did it. Of course, he was capable of doing that. Thank you for my preparation. Can you check my makeup while you're at it? Thank you very much. So anyway, hope, compassion, and love are three important components to me. Love. Jesus talked about the two, as did many prophets in the Old Testament as well, but Jesus talked about two of the most significant commandments. The one was that we love our God. And the second was, the one we all know, which is that we should love our neighbor as ourselves. I try to do that when I offer compassion to people in therapy. I try to do that when I talk to people about the people that they love. Some of my training is in the background of relationships. Marriage and family relationships is the type of license that I have in the state of Pennsylvania. That's really a misnomer. When I talk about relationships, it's not just marriage and family. It's about any relationship we have. Relationships we have with ourselves, for instance. We have a relationship with ourselves. Do we love ourselves? And sometimes people come to me because they are not clear on whether or not they love themselves and whether or not they want change. So I talk about relationships that people have with themselves, but I also talk about the relationships they have with other people as well. And that's an important aspect of what I do in therapy. So hope, compassion, and love are very important to me, and lessons that I learned from the man who lives here, and I hope I can say man, not just woman, but the person that lives here, our God, I learned some of those lessons from him.
Chrissy and Jane, I think you'll all agree that it's really interesting. Here we are talking about our faith, and we've gone through various disciplines at work, and yet we have even more variations from each of these three from the various places where they're working. So Jane, individual but advisory, and Chrissy really hands-on, one-to-one, and obviously Chaz, you're one-to-one also, but how a foundation of faith really helps personally as well as when you go out in the world and doing the profession that you're doing. I love the reference to the hope, compassion, and love. And, sometimes we think, well, business, where's the faith going to be there? And here today we get the opportunity to really see with health and wellness, and particularly with Jesus being the ultimate healer. I hadn't thought of that. So Chrissy, that's a good one. We were talking earlier before the session started about the pandemic and masks, and maybe you can just pick up on that discussion again for a moment, and then we can go on to some other questions.
Sure. Oh, the mask. I think for myself, as a medical person, I was very comfortable wearing a mask. I've had to wear a mask as a nurse periodically to protect patients from any germs I would give them, or vice versa, germs a patient would have that we could get. So a mask was never a political statement for me, and never will be. It makes perfect sense if we can help keep each other safe by wearing a mask. And I think there was definitely a need and a place for them during this pandemic. It is very nice as we seem to be coming out of the pandemic, it's becoming much more endemic, that we've learned a lot. I think each of us has learned a lot about protecting ourselves, our family, where we are in life, where the mask fits in or doesn't fit in, and using that to make some good decisions to help get through the rest of this now endemic phase of COVID. So it definitely, I think for all of us, we did some Zoom things where you didn't need to wear a mask and you could actually see people's faces, which is wonderful. But anytime you meet in person, having to wear a mask, there was just, I don't know about anybody else, I felt like I was in a tunnel. Like it was very hard to feel yourself communicating with other people while wearing a mask. So it definitely had some challenges along the way, but I think for me, I just kept focusing on where we're heading with this, and hopefully that, this will all be a thing of the past.
We are still 100% masked in the office, and I think will be for the foreseeable future. And I agree. I think we learned a lot through this pandemic. I think people learned a lot, too, about not only protecting yourself, but protecting others. And it all goes to loving your neighbor as yourself. Half the time people would ask questions like, why do we need to wear this mask? It's not for your own safety. It's to protect the other people around you. And really, that's ultimately what we're here for, right, is to love each other. So Yes, I sometimes feel like I'm suffocating in my mask, and I have to, even still 2 years in, go and take it off, and take a little bit of a break, because I feel like I'm in a tunnel and I'm suffocating. I'm talking all day, and I'm not seeing my patients too. So it's really, I think, one of the best parts of the visit is when I get that little brief glimpse, hey Johnny, take your mask down, let me see your mouth, and you're like, oh, that's what you look like a year later. It's so great. Say ah. It's just I look forward to the day when we can move past all of this and just get back to that human connection and interaction with people. But I have enjoyed being in person. We were chatting about this a little bit before the forum. I like hands-on. My profession lends itself to being with people. I like being with people, and we tried a little bit of Zoom. For me personally, it's not the way I like to practice my medicine. I don't think it's as good in my field and what I do. It's just not the same as putting my hands on a patient, feeling their belly, listening to their heart. And so I've been lucky that I've been able to be in person. Thank goodness for masks, that we could, safely provide care to our patients throughout the whole pandemic.
Masks, I think, have served a great purpose, obviously, and in the medical field, which is what you two are involved in. I've heard the same thing, that masks are the future, and that will probably stay around for quite a while. Right now, I'm personally doing Zoom therapy with people. Our office made a commitment. I do have an office in Wayne, but I work out of my house primarily doing Zoom. Our office made a commitment to only wear masks for the protection reason during all of this pandemic, and we've still continued to do that. So as a result, I've only been doing Zoom. And in Zoom, I prefer that because of the fact that people aren't wearing masks. A lot of what I do is trying to understand people when I talk with them. And a lot of understanding somebody is being aware of not only what they express verbally, but also the nonverbal expressions. And nonverbal expression is the look on your face. And if I can't see behind that mask, I'm missing an awful lot of trying to understand what people are all about. So I prefer Zoom just for that purpose. I agree with Chrissy that it's great to see the whole person. I don't have to put hands on like you two do, but it's great to see the whole person. And I would much rather be in person, face-to-face with somebody in an office. But right now, I'd opt for the whole idea of not having a mask.
Well, it's interesting because certainly the mask is a big topic for everyone all the time. You're talking about the relationship that you see when the mask isn't on or when it is on, and the relationship you have with the other person. And I'm curious, the three of you have mentioned, I'd say, one-to-one. How about as far as your faith goes with colleagues at work, or when you're in a situation where you draw on your faith to guide you through a particular situation? Maybe you could speak to that.
Oh, I'd be happy to speak to that. Mostly as a school nurse, because that was my one-on-one and group experience. So when I decided to do this, become a school nurse, I found that I was the only medical person in the building of 600 people. And even though they should all be healthy people, there was quite a stream of people coming through my office every day. The little ones, I was primary elementary school, so the little ones were occasionally even sick when they came to see me, but a lot of it was they just needed that break in their day. So they needed that one-on-one. And I was actually thinking of Frank's sermon this morning when he said, you go ask Jesus to heal you. So I would have these little children lined up out the door, and you could just read their faces from across the room if they, were sick, or maybe they didn't get breakfast, it was a rush morning, maybe they, the dog died, maybe something happened, and they just can't get on with their school day till they have that break and come in. So always check to make sure they're not sick first, but being in one building, I got to know the students very well. And then they could feel out what was really going on. And a lot of times the teachers would just send kids because they knew they needed that break and they needed something going on, or someone to help them figure out what was going on. So that part of the job, even though it wasn't like, treating someone with my nursing skills, it was definitely using part of me just to help them feel better about themselves, helping them get back to class, and that part was really great. I worked in a public school, so there's not a lot of overt religion going on in public schools, but I would drive the very short distance from my house to Devon Elementary every morning, and I would say a short prayer, just, God, please help me take really good care of these little cherubs, these little cherubs today. And my son, who was going through elementary school, he's like, Mom, what are cherubs? And I would say, well, exactly, they're little angels. And he would be like, oh, Mom, come on, they're not little angels going in to see you. So it was really kind of funny. But I actually did say that every morning because I really felt like there's a lot going on with these little children in their lives. There's a long line of kids. I wanted to make sure I gave everyone the attention they needed, which, of course, is not always possible. But I just wanted to do my best. And so I always said that little prayer on the way to work.
It is hard some days to go from room to room to room to room to room, and every room you walk into, the needs of the person on the other side of the door are different, and some kids are healthy and some kids are not, and even the healthy kids, as parents, have questions, and it can take a lot out of a person to, you have to be present to them, right? So you need to be physically present and think of the right words, and sometimes at the end of the day, again, wearing the mask and feeling suffocated, to say the right thing and to think of the right words. And so that, for me, is when my faith is, I think, strongest in my profession, when I ask God, help me think of the right words, help me get through this physically, just help me work through me, make me your, make me your servant. I don't know. I usually just say, help me find the right words to say to get me through those hard visits. And it is about human connection. And I think that's what I love most about my job, is that I feel like this was, I don't know, maybe it sounds cheesy or corny or cliche, but I really do feel like this was my calling in life, and this is the work I was meant to do. So that gives me satisfaction. I don't know if you need to have faith to do what I do. There's certainly a lot of doctors out there who aren't, who practice a different faith or no faith or whatever faith, but for me, that's helped me get through. And I'm lucky to work with a group of physicians, including Frank's lovely wife, Amy, who has been a true partner and friend and just, supporter, and it's really nice to have that at work, to feel that strength and to gather that from someone else so that you can kind of do it as a team. Sometimes it's hard to do it alone.
My job is a solitary profession. I think the same is probably for you too as well. If I'm wrong, please let me know that. But it's a solitary profession. You don't work so much closely with other people. On occasion, I have co-therapy with other people, or I've worked with a family and divided up individuals within the family, and then we would come together. But primarily, it's me and another client or a family that I'm working with. So a lot of the times, the thoughts that I have are my own, and how those thoughts relate to the faith that I have is consoling to me. And that's where I find a lot of support. When I think about where I came from and how I got here and the faith that I had growing up, as you did, the faith that I still experience now, and the thoughts that I might have about what God has offered us or what Jesus has offered us in the Bible, or even in the worship services that we participate in here. So all of that is probably more of what I find to be consolation for me, because I don't have a lot of opportunities to consult and talk with other people. I do on occasion. There will be people that will refer me clients, and I do the same. I refer them to other people as well, and we will have consultation maybe about a particular client and what the problems might be. I also meet on a regular monthly basis to talk about clients, just to discuss what's going on, to see if some insight can be found from other people, from other therapists who might be able to help in guiding me in some of the work that I'm doing. But it is a solitary profession. Yes, did you have a question, Walla? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you too well.
I'm sorry. I wanted to say something to you because I'm hearing you and it's hitting home. My second son is a Presbyterian minister and he's also a therapist. But
great.
what is important, and if you don't know about it, and I wish they had it here, it's called Samaritan Counseling Service, and it's all over Western Pennsylvania. They have many different satellites. The headquarters is in Sewickley in the Presbyterian Church, which has nothing to do with that church. But if you look it up, Samaritan Counseling Service, it's based on spirituality, and that's the heart of it.
Yes.
So, and my son is the head of it. So,
Excellent.
I have 2 children who are therapists, so I'm wondering what that's saying about me. I'm not sure.
It was nice of you to point that out. Thank you. I'll look into that for sure.
Please do, because it's just amazing what they do for
That's great.
people. And
Thank
they
you.
don't seem to have it around here for some reason.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wawa. I think it's so interesting to hear the stories and see how this fabric is weaving, and there may be seams, but it's all weaving together. So your background, your day-to-day. So I'm wondering if we have about 10 minutes left, if you just had a quick, before we close, just a quick suggestion. I think you've offered a lot already, but just a nugget that our listeners could take away today.
A suggestion about anything in particular, or just
Just something that you
faith
would
in the
like
work.
to add
Sure.
to what you've already had.
Okay.
You know, just to take away for people. I think we're fortunate that hope was the theme that Frank had in the sermon, and I think that you have surely mentioned that here. So just a little nugget.
I think the sorry, the nugget for me would be to, and I think Chrissy did a good job, and Chaz tapping into this, is to keep your mind open for when Jesus may come in to your life, not just your life, but that moment in your life where you need help, and not to be afraid to look for that, even when there's a lot going on, you're very busy. Whenever that happens and I feel disconnected, as soon as I stop and just kind of allow that Jesus to come in and to kind of help me focus on whatever I need to get done, it works. So I think that would be the nugget, is not to be afraid to just kind of, or try to remember to pause so that you can allow that to happen, and kind of, it makes things go a lot smoother.
Agreed. And I, kind of alluded to when I was in college and med school, where I felt like my faith was largely when I was asking God to help me, get through this test, get through this exam, pass the school year. God is there in the good times, the bad times when you need help, but also in those beautiful moments too. And I think that I feel, I love when Frank holds babies up when they're baptized. It's like the best, it's just the best moment. And I am so blessed that I get to experience that too when I round on newborns at the hospitals. It's my favorite part of my job. And every room I go into, and I get to meet these parents who are wide-eyed and just in love and in awe of their babies, and I get to hold this precious, beautiful baby, and it's like I feel touched by God. So I think my take-home point for people would be, look for those moments that help you get through your profession, through your job. Work is not easy. None of it is easy. Life isn't easy, but if you can find those moments that bring you joy, then it helps you get through.
I have a good friend who was a childhood friend who I played a lot of basketball with. And he was going through a rough time when he returned from Vietnam, and it was very, very difficult for him. I spent an awful lot of time with him just talking. We were younger and back from that point, and he said to me that I did a lot of help for him. It made me feel great. It was part of the reason that I got motivated finally to make the commitment that this is what I wanted to do. And he was a born-again Christian. I can't consider myself that, but I like to think of myself as a Christian. In any event, he quoted to me what I think was Luke, and the quote, I believe, I'm probably paraphrasing it, was, "Unto whom most or the best is given, much is expected." Some people may be familiar with that. He basically said to me, "Chaz, you got a gift. I think you should use it." And it really has always stuck with me that his saying that to me is really kind of what put me over the edge and made me say, this is the kind of work I want to do. I think I can be helpful. I think when I talk to people, it can make them feel better and to have better lives. The other interesting thing I remember is Martin Luther King, not Martin Luther. Martin Luther King, I believe, was the one that said, if you're going to be a street sweeper, be the Michelangelo of street sweepers. Be the best at what you do. Everybody has skills, everybody has abilities, everybody has something they can be good about. So find out what that is, and when you find out what that is, be the best at it. Try to utilize the skills that God gave you. Try to utilize the skills that you have and improve on those skills if you can.
Well, thank you. And Chaz, mentioning about the spiritual gifts, because I think Frank, with his program of spiritual gifts, tells us we do have the gifts, and it's our responsibility to take it out into the world and use. So thank you so much, Jane, Chrissy, and Chaz, for joining us and sharing your stories and your faith with us, because I think it's really valuable. I'm going to just close with Colossians 3. Whatever you do, whether in speech or action, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, and give thanks to God the Father through him. Whatever you do, do it from the heart for the Lord and not for the people. You know that you will receive an inheritance as a reward. You serve the Lord Christ. Amen. So thank you all for joining us here in person, on the panel, and on the live stream.
Thanks.